Welcome to AI American Generals. July 10, 1942. The mist hung low over the frozen marshes of Akutan Island, Alaska. A PBY Catalina skimmed the cold waters, engines droning steadily, carrying eyes and ears in search of the unknown. Machinist mate Albert Knack leaned over the side, scanning the marsh, unaware that history itself lay inverted beneath the reeds. A Japanese Zero fighter, upside down, waiting to be discovered. The morning was heavy with fog, the kind that smothers sound and conceals movement. Waves lapped softly against the Catalina's hull, and the distant cry of gulls echoed across the marshes. For Knack and his crew, this was a routine patrol, part of the endless effort to map, observe, and survive the vast icy expanse of the Aleutian Islands. Yet even routine carried a weight. Each flight could encounter the unexpected, the deadly, the historic. Akutan Island had long been a place of mystery and threat. Japanese aircraft had skirted the region, striking with precision and vanishing into cloud or sea. American pilots spoke of the Zero with a mixture of awe and fear. Fast, agile, nearly untouchable. Stories circulated of dogfights where the sleek Japanese fighters seemed to dance just beyond reach, vanishing before any retaliatory fire could connect. Knack's Catalina moved cautiously, wings cutting through mist, floats tracing pale wakes in the dark water. He knew the dangers were not always immediate. The threat could hide in clouds, in unexpected landings, or in the curves of fog-laden marshes. The crew shared quiet glances, tension masked by the monotony of engines humming, instruments ticking, and the cold seeping into bones. Suddenly, a glint of silver caught Knack's eye. At first, it seemed a trick of the light, a reflection of sky on water. He leaned closer, squinting. Shapes became clearer. The unmistakable silhouette of a fighter, wings, tail, fuselage, was upside down in the marsh, partially submerged but clearly intact. The discovery was more than unusual. It was unprecedented. American pilots had long feared the Zero's reputation for invincibility. To see one so vulnerable, inverted, and motionless sent a quiet shock through Knack. Every story, every encounter, every report of fiery explosions in the skies suddenly carried new meaning. The Zero was not indestructible. It had weaknesses, and now those weaknesses lay before him. The pilot, Lieutenant William Thez, had taken a rare route over Akutan Island, navigating terrain and weather that most would avoid. Fate, geography, and circumstance combined to place this aircraft in American hands. The serendipity of the moment would have profound consequences. Engineers, strategists, and pilots would soon study this aircraft to understand why the Zero, so feared, could not withstand even modest damage. As Knack's crew circled the wreck, the marsh seemed to hold its breath. Water lapped against the fuselage, reeds brushing wings, and the engine's drone echoed softly against distant hills. There was no fanfare, no immediate recognition of the aircraft's historical significance, only careful observation, note-taking, and the measured calm of men who had seen danger, but were unprepared for discovery. The Zero itself told a story of priorities and philosophy. Its designers had valued speed, maneuverability, and performance over pilot safety. Armor was minimal, self-sealing fuel tanks absent. These design choices created a fighter that could outmaneuver almost any adversary but was tragically fragile in combat. Every dent, scrape, and broken panel in the marsh bore witness to this calculated vulnerability. For American pilots, reports of enemy fighters bursting into flames during dogfights had been frustrating, sometimes terrifying mysteries. The discovery on Akutan Island revealed the explanation. The Zero's lack of protective armor, combined with its lightweight construction, made it extraordinarily efficient in flight, but catastrophically fragile when hit. Knack's eyes traced the fuselage, noting details that would later guide engineers and military planners. Rivets, paneling, fuel lines, and cockpit layout all spoke of a philosophy prioritizing agility over endurance. Even now, upside down and half submerged, the Zero seemed poised for flight, a ghost of the threat it had represented only days before. The significance of the find was quiet but profound. The crew understood that this moment could reshape aerial strategy in the Pacific. Pilots, previously fearful of the Zero's reputation, would now gain actionable insight. Engineers could design tactics to exploit its vulnerabilities. American lives and countless operations across the Pacific theater might benefit from the knowledge lying, inverted and silent, in the marsh. As the Catalina lifted slightly to circle once more, Knack felt the weight of history pressing down in the still morning air. The marsh, the cold, the fog, all seemed to acknowledge the importance of the moment. A simple observation, a quiet patrol, had unveiled a truth that would ripple through the skies of the Pacific. And as the Catalina turned back toward base, the crew carried not just a fighter plane in sight, but a revelation. Even the most feared weapon can harbor a fatal flaw waiting to be discovered by those patient enough to look. July 10, 1942, the marshes of Akutan Island lay shrouded in mist. A PBY Catalina hovered above, engines humming steadily. Albert Knack leaned over the hull, eyes fixed on the upside-down silhouette of a Japanese Zero. What seemed like a silent wreck would soon reveal secrets that could change the tide of the Pacific. War! The Zero rested unnaturally in the shallow waters. Its sleek fuselage, half-submerged, wings angled awkwardly against reeds and mud. From a distance, it looked like a simple wreck, a casualty of accident rather than design. Yet every detail suggested something far more consequential. The aircraft had not been destroyed by fire or bombardment. It had succumbed to a combination of pilot miscalculation, treacherous geography, and the unforgiving Aleutian weather. Knack's first impression was of disbelief. The Zero had long been considered nearly invincible by American pilots. Reports of dogfights told of fighters outmaneuvering superior numbers, diving and banking with a speed and grace that made interception almost impossible. To see one defeated so quietly, lying prone in the marsh, was both shocking and exhilarating. Lieutenant William Thez, the Zero's pilot, had taken an unusual route over Akutan Island. Navigating a landscape few dared traverse, Thez attempted to avoid detection and optimize his mission. A sudden downdraft, misjudged turn, or treacherous patch of terrain sent the aircraft into a catastrophic stall, flipping it inverted and trapping it in the marsh. Fate, chance, and human error had combined to deliver this rare prize into American hands. The Catalina circled lower, engines echoing over frozen wetlands, as Knack and the crew leaned over to document the aircraft. Its design spoke volumes: a lightweight fuselage, minimal armor, and a cockpit that prioritized visibility and control over pilot protection. Engineers would later note the absence of self-sealing fuel tanks and the vulnerability of critical components to even minor strikes. These were design decisions that made the Zero formidable in maneuverability, but fragile under sustained fire. Every observation was recorded meticulously. Knack noted the thinness of the metal skin, the alignment of rivets, and the cockpit layout. Crewmen photographed the wreck, sketched diagrams, and marked the location with precision. Each note was a small step toward unraveling the mystery of the Zero's dominance and vulnerability. For American pilots, understanding these details could mean the difference between life and death in future engagements. The aircraft's condition offered clues beyond design flaws. Panels dented, wings stressed, and landing gear twisted all suggested the forces endured during the crash. Analysis would later show how a machine engineered for agility could succumb to what appeared to be minor accidents. The contradiction was striking. A fighter built to dance above the Pacific could be felled by its own limitations. Knack's report would soon reach the hands of military engineers and tacticians. Its significance was immediate. American forces now had a tangible model of the enemy's most feared aircraft. Pilots could train using real specifications, mechanics could plan for engagement vulnerabilities, and strategists could develop tactics exploiting the Zero's weakness. This single discovery promised to reshape aerial warfare in the Pacific theater. The human story behind the Zero was equally poignant. Lieutenant Thez had survived the mishap, but was lost to the elements soon after, a reminder of the thin line between survival and catastrophe in combat. His error minor by some measures, revealed a flaw in design that would benefit thousands of American lives. History in this moment was a balance of tragedy and revelation. For Knack and his Catalina crew, the mission suddenly shifted from reconnaissance to salvage and analysis. Every movement was deliberate, every observation critical. The marsh, once merely a landscape of fog and reeds, had become a laboratory of discovery. The crew measured wingspan, documented fuselage curvature, and noted engine placement. Each detail was a piece of a puzzle that explained why American fighters often saw the enemy engulfed in flame after sustaining hits. Engineers later confirmed what Knack's observations suggested. The Zero's light construction, combined with lack of armor, made even minor hits catastrophic. Its fuel tanks could rupture, engines could ignite, and structural weakness could lead to immediate loss in combat. What had been a mysterious advantage in the skies now had an explanation. The Zero was not invincible. It had simply been highly optimized for agility at the cost of resilience. This revelation sent ripples through tactical planning. Pilots could now engage Zeros with greater confidence, aiming for weak points rather than avoiding combat altogether. Naval and aerial strategists adjusted tactics, emphasizing the vulnerabilities exposed by the Akutan find. What seemed a simple accident became a strategic advantage, a rare gift from misfortune, geography, and meticulous observation. As the Catalina lifted away from the marsh, engines fading into the distance, Knack's crew understood the weight of the discovery. A single aircraft, inverted and silent, had altered the understanding of a deadly adversary. The Zero's reputation as invincible had been challenged, and American forces would carry that knowledge into battles across the Pacific. In the stillness of Akutan Island, the wreck seemed almost to breathe with significance. The marsh held its secret no longer. In the hands of patient observers, a hidden truth about design, vulnerability, and human ingenuity had been uncovered, one that would shape aerial engagements for months to come. And as the PBY Catalina cut through mist toward base, one thought lingered above the roar of engines. Even the most feared adversary can harbor a fatal flaw, waiting for the eyes willing to find it. July 11, 1942, Akutan Island, Alaska. The Zero rested in the marsh, silent but revealing its secrets. American engineers and mechanics approached carefully, aware that within its lightweight fuselage lay answers to the questions that had haunted pilots across the Pacific. Every rivet, every panel, every engine component held the potential to change the course of aerial combat. The morning air was crisp, tinged with salt, and the faint scent of marsh reeds. Knack and his Catalina crew had returned to assist in examining the wreck. Military engineers and technicians were already on site, their notebooks and cameras at the ready. The Zero, upside down in shallow water, was more than a downed aircraft. It was a textbook of design philosophy waiting to be read. Careful hands lifted panels, documenting the fuselage, wings, and tail. Each component spoke of a machine engineered for performance above all else. The aluminum skin was thin and flexible, allowing for incredible agility, but offering virtually no protection. Fuel tanks were unarmored, leaving them vulnerable to ignition from even minor rounds. Every detail reinforced a startling conclusion. The Zero had sacrificed survivability for speed and maneuverability. Mechanics marveled at the ingenuity behind the design. Controls were finely tuned, the cockpit ergonomically arranged for maximum visibility, and the engine capable of high-rev performance. Yet beneath this elegance lay fragility. Knack's crew observed what engineers later quantified. The aircraft could outmaneuver nearly any adversary, but a single hit to a critical system could result in catastrophic failure. Lieutenant Thes's flight path offered insight into both human error and mechanical limits. By taking an unorthodox route over Akutan Island, he had encountered conditions that exposed the aircraft's vulnerabilities. A sudden gust, a misjudged turn, or momentary inattention could lead to disaster. The Zero's design, optimized for dogfighting at speed, was ill-suited to unexpected environmental challenges. This incident highlighted the delicate balance between performance and safety in wartime engineering. American engineers began meticulous documentation. Measurements of wingspan, fuselage dimensions, and engine specifications were recorded. Photographs captured every angle. Notes detailed the layout of fuel lines, control cables, and armor, or lack thereof. Each observation contributed to a growing understanding. The Zero's perceived invincibility was largely a product of its agility, not its durability. The significance extended beyond technical curiosity. American pilots had long recounted encounters where Zeros, seemingly untouchable, would suddenly erupt in flames when hit. The Akutan discovery explained these reports. The lack of armor, combined with highly flammable fuel storage and lightweight construction, meant that even minor hits could trigger catastrophic fires. For the first time, engineers could see the mechanical reasoning behind a pattern that had puzzled combat crews for months. In practical terms, the implications were enormous. Tactics could now be adjusted to exploit these vulnerabilities. Pilots learned that precision targeting of critical systems, fuel tanks, engines, or control surfaces could neutralize the Zero without requiring extreme firepower or maneuvering beyond human capability. Knowledge born of accident and observation transformed uncertainty into strategy. The examination also revealed the ingenuity and limitations of Japanese engineering philosophy. Every design choice reflected prioritization. Speed, climb rate, and agility came first, pilot protection came last. This trade-off explained why the Zero excelled in short engagements, but faltered under sustained attack. It was a machine of elegance, yes, but one that demanded respect for its weaknesses. Knack observed quietly as engineers and mechanics worked. He understood that this wreck would have implications far beyond the marsh. Training manuals, tactical briefings, and aerial strategies would soon incorporate the lessons learned here. American pilots would fly with a newfound understanding of how to engage their most feared adversary. The Zero's secrets, once hidden in plain sight, were now tools for survival and tactical advantage. Every detail reinforced the duality of the aircraft. On one hand, it represented brilliance, aerodynamic efficiency, control responsiveness, and remarkable climb rates. On the other, it represented fragility, flammable fuel, minimal protection, and vulnerability to cumulative stress. Soldiers and engineers alike recognized that understanding both sides of this duality was essential. As the day progressed, the Zero was carefully stabilized and prepared for eventual transport. Engineers ensured that components remained intact for further study, while mechanics noted repairs and damage that could inform pilot tactics. Photographs documented the aircraft's condition at every angle, preserving a permanent record for analysis in laboratories far from the Aleutian marshes. Even in its immobilized state, the Zero seemed to teach. Each panel, rivet, and fuel line told a story about design philosophy, wartime priorities, and the human cost of pushing technology to extremes. Knack and the crew felt the weight of history pressing in. A single aircraft, discovered by chance, had the power to inform strategy and save lives in battles yet to come. By evening, the marsh had quieted. Mist rolled across the water, and the distant hum of the Catalina's engines faded. Soldiers, engineers, and pilots gathered around, reflecting on the significance of what they had uncovered. The Zero, once feared as invincible, had been unmasked, revealing not only its own vulnerabilities, but the critical role of observation, analysis, and human ingenuity in warfare. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over reeds and mud, one thought lingered among those who had seen it firsthand. Even the most agile and feared adversary is only as invincible as the knowledge of those who observe it. July 1942, the Zero, recovered from the marshes of Akutan Island, was no longer just a wreck. It was a revelation waiting to be confirmed, a puzzle of engineering and strategy that would test assumptions. About the Pacific War, engineers and pilots alike would soon see what made the feared fighter both brilliant and catastrophically fragile. The Zero was carefully transported to a makeshift testing site. Its fragile aluminum frame shielded from the elements, engineers and military analysts approached methodically, aware that even small insights could ripple across the Pacific theater. Every panel, every wire, Every rivet was examined to confirm what Knack and his crew had first observed in the marsh. Initial tests focused on structural integrity. Panels were stressed, control surfaces manipulated, and fuel lines inspected. The aircraft, designed for performance over protection, showed exactly what engineers feared: thin skin, unarmored fuel tanks, and critical components exposed to even minor damage. Measurements confirmed calculations made in the field. The Zero's agility came at a human cost, leaving pilots vulnerable to the simplest hits. Pilots who had flown against Zeros were brought in to provide first-hand insight. Their accounts, now corroborated by physical evidence, painted a vivid picture of what had long been reported in dogfights: sudden bursts of fire, rapid disintegration upon impact, and the sometimes inexplicable loss of aircraft in engagements that seemed routine. The marsh discovery had transformed anecdote into verifiable fact. Engineers conducted controlled firing tests on replicated panels and mock components. Each test confirmed the vulnerability observed in Akutan. Even small caliber rounds could penetrate fuel tanks, sever control lines, or ignite engines. The theoretical danger became quantifiable, and American pilots could now understand exactly why the Zero, so deadly in maneuver, so graceful in climb and turn, was fatally fragile under sustained fire. The human impact of this confirmation was profound. Flight instructors revised combat briefings. Pilots trained to exploit weaknesses revealed by the marsh discovery. Tactics shifted subtly but significantly. Engagement strategies emphasized targeting fuel tanks and engine compartments rather than attempting to match agility stroke for stroke. Knowledge born of accident and observation became the foundation of survival. Mechanics and engineers worked in tandem, cataloging every feature of the Zero. The cockpit layout, throttle responsiveness, and visibility were noted, along with flaws that had contributed to the crash. Every observation reinforced a growing consensus. Japanese design choices had prioritized speed and maneuverability over crew safety, creating a fighter whose brilliance was inseparable from its vulnerabilities. The confirmation phase also revealed subtler insights. The Zero's light frame allowed extraordinary performance, but required constant attention to maintenance and handling. Minor miscalculations by pilots could lead to structural failure, and environmental factors, wind gusts, cloud cover, or icy terrain, could expose inherent weaknesses. Engineers realized that combat success depended not only on design, but on conditions, training, and human judgment. American pilots internalized these lessons quickly. Flying exercises simulated engagements with the Zero's characteristics, highlighting which maneuvers were safe and which left pilots exposed. Knowledge of vulnerabilities transformed fear into strategic opportunity, giving air crews confidence that had previously been undermined by the Zero's reputation. Military strategists began to see the broader implications. Aircraft previously considered nearly invincible were now understood in practical terms. Production priorities, pilot training, and engagement tactics could be adjusted accordingly. The Zero, once an abstract menace in reports and dogfights, was now a machine with measurable weaknesses, exploitable by careful planning and observation. The testing also had psychological effects. Pilots who had faced Zeros knew firsthand the terror of their agility. Confirmation of vulnerabilities shifted that fear into a calculated respect. Crews could now enter combat with strategies based on analysis rather than uncertainty. In this way, a single aircraft from a remote marsh had transformed perception, morale, and tactical planning simultaneously. As days of testing concluded, engineers summarized findings. The Zero's superiority in speed and maneuver came at the price of fragility. American pilots could exploit weaknesses, survive engagements that had once seemed fatal, and apply lessons from Akutan across Pacific operations. The aircraft was simultaneously brilliant and flawed, a paradox whose resolution had far-reaching consequences. By evening, the Zero rested under protective cover, photographed and documented from every angle. Each observation, every confirmation, was logged and archived for dissemination to units preparing for combat. Knowledge that had once been anecdotal, fiery losses, sudden crashes, reports of invincibility, was now scientific and actionable. The marsh, the accident, and NAC's observation had catalyzed a transformation in understanding. From the frozen, fog-laden shores of Akutan Island to the laboratories and briefing rooms of the Navy, the journey of discovery, examination, and confirmation illustrated a fundamental truth of war. Vigilance, observation, and analysis can turn chance into strategic advantage, and fear into preparation. And as night fell over the testing site, the Zero lay quiet, a paradox of engineering and vulnerability, whispering lessons about design, endurance, and human ingenuity. Even the most agile and feared adversary can be understood, tested, and overcome if one has the patience to observe and the courage to act. July 1942, from the marshes of Akutan Island to the briefing rooms of the Pacific Theater, a single Japanese Zero had revealed a truth long suspected but never confirmed. Its secrets would ripple through strategy, training, and the very way American pilots approached the skies of war. The Zero, once feared as an untouchable predator of the skies, had become a teacher. Knowledge extracted from the marsh and confirmed in testing transformed the approach to aerial combat in the Pacific. Pilots and tacticians now had a tangible understanding of the fighter's strengths and weaknesses. The revelation was subtle but decisive. Speed and maneuverability did not guarantee invincibility. Vulnerability lay where armor and protection were absent. Briefing rooms across the Pacific buzzed with discussion. Flight instructors presented diagrams of the Akutan Zero, emphasizing critical points, fuel tanks, engine placement, and control lines. Pilots studied photographs and notes with intense focus, tracing the contours and structure of an aircraft that had long been considered a specter in dogfights. Knowledge, once abstract, became practical guidance. Training exercises were redesigned to reflect these insights. Pilots practiced targeting maneuvers aimed at the Zero's vulnerabilities. Simulated engagements emphasized patience, observation, and calculated aggression rather than frantic evasive action. The Zero's agility remained formidable, but American aircrews learned to anticipate its limitations, exploiting weak points rather than confronting speed directly. The human element was as important as the mechanical. Pilots understood that the Zero's weaknesses could only be exploited through disciplined, precise action. Haste or overconfidence could still result in catastrophe, even against a fragile opponent. Training emphasized situational awareness, energy management, and tactical positioning, turning knowledge into a tool of survival. Engineers also played a critical role. They translated observations from Akutan into recommendations for aircraft engagement and maintenance. Insights into structural weaknesses informed ammunition choices, tactical planning, and even formation flying. The Zero, once merely an adversary to fear, now guided both strategic and technical preparation across units. The implications extended beyond the cockpit. Commanders adjusted mission planning to incorporate the newfound understanding. Escorts were allocated with greater precision. Interceptions were timed to exploit enemy vulnerabilities. Intelligence reports, previously focused on anecdotal accounts of the Zero's invincibility, were revised to include systematic analysis, ensuring that every unit could benefit from the Akutan discovery. Even minor adjustments had cascading effects. Pilots learned that targeting the engine or fuel system could neutralize a threat without prolonged engagement. Squadrons coordinated strikes based on structural insights, combining speed, firepower, and tactical patience. The Zero's previously feared reputation was reframed. Dangerous, yes, but no longer inexplicable. The Zero also reshaped confidence and morale. Pilots who had once approached dogfights with apprehension now entered with a tactical framework. Fear was replaced with preparation. Skill and understanding became as valuable as instinct and reflex. The Akutan discovery, combined with rigorous training, allowed aircrews to engage Japanese fighters with an unprecedented blend of caution and aggression. The practical consequences were immediate. Engagements began to reflect new doctrine. American pilots could now survive encounters that previously seemed fatal. Loss rates, though still tragic, were mitigated by precision targeting and disciplined tactics. The Zero's design, brilliant yet fragile, became a guide for survival, a map of risk, opportunity, and engineering reality. Beyond tactical engagement, the Zero influenced production and strategic thinking. Engineers studied its design to anticipate improvements and limitations in Japanese manufacturing. Understanding material choices, weight distribution, and structural weaknesses allowed planners to forecast enemy capabilities, shaping larger operational decisions. Knowledge gained from one accident in a marsh was transforming the broader conduct of war. Pilots and instructors would later recount how the lessons from Akutan changed their approach. Training flights emphasized patient observation, careful engagement, and exploitation of vulnerabilities rather than reactionary maneuvers. The Zero's secrets, once hidden in mist and reeds, now guided hundreds of aircrew lives across thousands of miles. The story of Akutan Island and the Zero also highlighted a profound truth. The most powerful advantage in war is knowledge applied with precision. Mechanical brilliance alone does not guarantee victory. Survival depends on understanding, preparation, and the human capacity to interpret and act on insight. As the sun set over Pacific training bases, pilots reflected on the Zero's paradox. Agile, fast, and deadly, it had struck fear into hearts across the theater. Yet, in its design, it carried the seeds of its own defeat. Vulnerabilities that, once observed, could be exploited. The discovery at Akutan had turned what was once dread into actionable intelligence, transforming risk into opportunity. And as night fell over the islands and bases, one lesson lingered quietly in every briefing, every exercise, and every cockpit. In war, understanding the enemy is as vital as confronting them, and the smallest revelation can alter the course of countless lives. July 1942. The Zero lay inverted in the marshes of Akutan Island, a discovery of machines, metal, and engineering, but also of human lives and choices. Every rivet, every panel whispered stories of courage, error, and the quiet sacrifices that make war both strategic and profoundly human. The Zero's discovery was not only a triumph of observation, but a reflection on human vulnerability. Lieutenant William Thez, the pilot who had crashed the aircraft, had faced fate in the unforgiving Aleutian wilderness. Though surviving the initial crash, he ultimately succumbed to the harsh terrain and isolation, a stark reminder that even skillful flight and technical mastery cannot always overcome circumstance. For machinist Matus, Albert Knack, and the Catalina crew, the incident carried both pride and sorrow. Their keen observation had turned a routine patrol into a pivotal moment in Pacific history. Yet they understood the human cost behind the machine, the lives risked, the errors made under pressure, and the consequences of miscalculation in a war where small mistakes could be fatal. As engineers and mechanics studied the Zero, they were acutely aware of the fragile intersection between human and machine. The aircraft's design had demanded skillful handling. One lapse could result in disaster. Thez's choice of route, weather conditions, and split-second decisions combined to create a tragic outcome, demonstrating that war is as much about human judgment as mechanical performance. American pilots who would soon engage Zeros learned these lessons firsthand. The Marsh discovery became a case study in survival, emphasizing not only the vulnerabilities of the enemy, but also the importance of vigilance, preparation, and understanding risk. Pilots were taught that knowledge could reduce loss, but it could not eliminate it. Each engagement remained a dangerous gamble, where human error carried consequences as severe as enemy fire. Behind the scenes, engineers reflected on the broader implications of the find. The Zero's construction choices, light armor, unprotected fuel tanks, minimal pilot shielding, revealed a philosophy prioritizing agility over endurance. Yet these same choices had directly contributed to Thez's fate. Every design decision in war had a human element, intertwining innovation with vulnerability. brilliance with mortality. The Catalina crew, engineers, and pilots involved in examining the Zero carried an unspoken awareness. War is measured not only in victories, but in the human costs borne to achieve them. For every discovery, every strategic advantage, there is a story of loss, sacrifice, and the relentless pressure faced by those on the front lines. News of the Zero's recovery spread quickly through military channels. Briefings emphasized structural weaknesses, providing tactical advantage. Yet, amidst the excitement and analysis, stories of Thes's struggle and ultimate demise were quietly acknowledged. His flight, an attempt at operational effectiveness, had inadvertently provided a lifeline to American forces. History, in this instance, was a mixture of human error and fortuitous outcome. A reminder of the fragility of life even in machines. Designed for combat soldiers, and air crews who trained on the Akutan Zero often contemplated the paradox it represented. It was deadly yet fragile, formidable yet vulnerable, a testament to both human ingenuity and the consequences of underestimating the environment. Each briefing and training exercise carried lessons not just about the aircraft's weaknesses, but about the human capacity to adapt, survive, and make decisions under extreme pressure. Engineers and military strategists also considered the long-term implications. The Zero's flaws suggested avenues for counter-strategy, but they also prompted reflection on the limits of engineering when human error or environmental factors come into play. Lessons from Akutan would inform not just immediate combat tactics, but the design of future aircraft, emphasizing resilience, protection, and the delicate balance between performance and survivability. The marsh itself, quiet and mist-laden, seemed to hold its breath for those who worked there. Engineers photographed and measured, noting every detail, but the landscape also reminded all present of the cost of discovery. History was not made in isolation. It was carved out of human risk, judgment, and endurance. The Zero's secrets were invaluable, but the human price, Thez, the crews, the long hours in harsh weather, was equally profound. As testing and training continued, the knowledge gained at Akutan rippled across the Pacific. Pilots engaged with greater confidence, using the lessons to survive encounters that had once been lethal. Yet every success was tempered by the recognition that war's human cost is never fully mitigated. Each tactical advantage gained came at the expense of observation, endurance, and sometimes life itself. In reflection, the Zero became a symbol of duality, a mechanical marvel and a cautionary tale, teaching strategy and humility, precision and respect for the unpredictable. For NAC engineers and pilots alike, the lesson was clear. War is waged with both intellect and courage, but every revelation carries with it echoes of human vulnerability. And as night settled over the Aleutians, with engines silenced and marshes quiet, one enduring thought lingered. Every victory in war is measured not only in machines overcome, but in the human cost endured to understand, confront, and survive them. July 1942. The Zero lay inverted in the marshes of Akutan Island. Its discovery had revealed flaws, vulnerabilities, and lessons that would echo across the Pacific theater. Years later, its story would endure, a testament to observation, human ingenuity, and the quiet impact of a single aircraft on the course of war. The Zero's journey from marsh to laboratory to tactical study became one of the Pacific War's pivotal yet understated stories. It was a single aircraft, yet its influence rippled far beyond its aluminum frame. Engineers dissected it, pilots trained against its specifications, and strategists recalibrated tactics. Every detail mattered. Rivets, fuel lines, cockpit layout, and control surfaces were examined and documented with painstaking care. For American pilots, the Akutan Zero became a cornerstone of survival. Knowledge of its vulnerabilities allowed for the development of practical strategies. Dogfights were no longer gambles against the unknown. They became calculated engagements informed by observation and science. Training emphasized exploiting weak points rather than competing solely on speed and maneuverability. The Zero's secrets had transformed fear into actionable intelligence, proving that understanding the enemy was as vital as confronting them. The discovery also shaped aircraft design philosophy. Engineers studied the balance between agility and protection, noting that extreme performance often came at the expense of crew safety. The Zero's fragile construction highlighted the importance of armored fuel tanks, reinforced fuselages, and pilot protection, lessons that informed subsequent American fighter production. In this way, the wreck of a single fighter influenced both immediate tactics and long-term engineering priorities. Yet the story of Akutan was not only about machines, it was about human vision, courage, and endurance. Nack's observation, Thes's fateful flight, and the meticulous work of engineers and mechanics exemplified the interplay of chance and human effort in warfare. Each person involved had contributed to the revelation, whether through skill, perseverance, or unintended consequence. History, in this instance, was built not only from machines, but from human action, observation, and ingenuity. The Pacific theater itself changed because of this knowledge. Pilots armed with understanding could confront Zeros with confidence, reducing losses and saving lives. Squadrons adapted tactics to exploit weaknesses previously hidden in myth and rumor. The Zero's reputation for invincibility was tempered, replaced by a measured respect that acknowledged both its brilliance and its vulnerabilities. The impact of one aircraft, discovered in a remote marsh, was now felt across thousands of miles of combat operations. Historians would later reflect on the Akutan Zero as a moment where observation, analysis, and circumstance converged to create strategic advantage. A single machine, once feared, had been turned into a tool for survival and insight. Its story underscores a fundamental truth of war. Knowledge can be more decisive than firepower, and understanding the enemy can save lives where force alone cannot. The aircraft itself became a symbol of duality, elegant yet fragile, deadly yet revealing. Museums, archives, and photographs preserved its legacy. Pilots and engineers studied its lines and panels, not just to understand what had been, but to prepare for what might come. Every measurement, every observation, every insight became part of a larger narrative about human ingenuity, risk, and resilience. For those who survived the Pacific campaigns, the Akutan discovery was a quiet reminder of the interconnectedness of human effort and engineering insight. Decisions made in foggy marshes, meticulous measurements, and patient observation all had consequences that reached far beyond the immediate moment. One flight, one aircraft, one human observation, each played a role in shaping the course of history. In the decades that followed, the Zero story endured in teaching, writing, and reflection. Flight instructors recounted the lessons in classrooms. Engineers referenced its design in technical manuals. Historians analyzed the incident to illustrate the value of observation, experimentation, and the human dimension of war. The legacy of Akutan was both tangible and intangible, a machine and a memory, metal and lesson, fear and understanding. The marshes of Akutan Island, once silent witnesses, became hallowed in memory. They had concealed a secret for years, only to reveal it to those willing to observe with patience and precision. The Zero, inverted and still, had provided clarity in the chaos of war, transforming myth into knowledge and danger into strategy. As archives preserved the photographs, diagrams, and reports, the human stories remained just as important. Nack's keen eyes, Thes's fateful flight, and the engineer's careful analysis together form a narrative about courage, curiosity, and the enduring impact of one discovery. History, in this case, is a composite of machine and mind, of chance and deliberate effort, of life observed and understood. And as the Pacific skies cleared over years of conflict, one final thought lingers. Even the most feared adversary can be understood, measured, and studied, and in that understanding, lives can be saved, strategies refined, and history rewritten. The Zero of Akutan Island endures not merely as an aircraft, but as a testament to the quiet, meticulous work of observation, a reminder that sometimes the most profound victories are won not with guns and firepower, but with insight, patience, and human ingenuity.